Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Ellen coming to you from the beautiful island of St. Bart's, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Coming to you direct from New York City, this is Dennis. And on this edition of Light Talk, we discuss the Tony Awards, Showlight, more programming notes, and external validation, all on Light Talk today.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers
And
Yay.
Sister.
That's right,
Welcome
Ellen.
back.
Welcome
Thank
back
you.
to our prodigal
Thank
sister.
Thank you, thank you.
Did you eat lots of smelly cheese?
Oh
Smelly
my God,
cheese.
yes. Endless cheese.
Gross.
I was upset, Ellen. You missed my first three episodes with the brothers.
Well, I'm back. I am back. Can't get rid of me now.
You know, I'm in tech on a show right now, and one of the electricians walked up to me and he said, "What happened to that woman? I like that woman."
That woman.
Yes.
I don't know if that's
woman.
politically correct. How
I
about
don't-
Ellen?
But you have a fan in Dallas.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
She has fans everywhere. Ellen is internationally known, and by the way, Ellen sort of represented us at Showlight. We're going to talk about Showlight in a few minutes, but thank you, Ellen, for being our Lumen sister there.
Yes, it's really a shame you didn't all come. It was quite a wonderful event.
We sent our best.
All right, welcome everyone to episode 428. And today, as you heard, we're going to be talking about Showlight. We're also going to be talking about the Tony Awards, but I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about Design Showcase West that I attended like 2 weekends ago. And it was certainly a first-class presentation by the good people at UCLA. I must say that every year they kind of outdo themselves. The student work was really terrific. It was from students, schools all over the country. Also, their guest speaker this year was Deborah Scott, who was the costume designer for the Avatar movies. She showed her work and gave a very inspirational speech to the students. It was very, very impressive. They have this beautiful lunch in their garden. It's just a gorgeous setting. And with fantastic food, by the way. Give the food there. It reminds me of a Ming's clam bake. They used to take us all out to lunches. It was so nice. They do create this great sense of community there. But the student work was fabulous. And I must say, the one thing I learned from this, from looking at the work, we talk about what to present at your portfolio reviews. For all the students out there, you guys better step it up a notch, because the type of technology that was presented was really, really impressive. Yeah, I know Steve in the past has said a lot of photos. That holds true even more. And to be able to show the photos. But more than that, movies and film, video of your work is very important, because every lighting designer I saw had a video. And I was able to look at that video and actually critique the lighting of whatever short they were showing me. And it's not just your live work, but it's also work that you may have done on student films and things like that. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And I saw very little drafting there, although they all had drafting if you wanted to see it. But they're not throwing, drafting all over the tables, because they got so much other stuff to show that's much more interesting than light plots. So that's the takeaway I got from attending this year. And I just want to say once again, kudos to everyone at UCLA and Design Showcase West for putting on a terrific portfolio review. You all are doing a great service to these students, and you should be proud of the work you're doing.
Quick question. In the past, it's always been difficult for designers, especially lighting designers, to render their work in still photography, especially if the photography wasn't good. What was your sense on the videos? Do you think it was an accurate representation? And where does it come from? Who's doing the video?
What's amazing is that it's not only the videos, but it's also their storyboards, because they're all using 3D rendering programs. They're doing fly-throughs where the camera flies through the space.
Wow.
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, this stuff, I'm telling you,
Wow.
A lot has changed over the past 5-6 years. They are all using super high-end rendering softwares. So, and I'm sure Stan would have really appreciated this, because that's the sort of thing he's into. I just think that it's a terrific way of doing it. And it helped me as a reviewer to talk to them about their design work. It's no longer just looking at a light plot and saying, well, why do you use this particular light instead of that particular light? No, it has to do now with a lot more design thought, which I was blown away. There were students from all over the country. There were students from Cal Arts, from the American Film Institute, from Carnegie Mellon, from our sister Ann School, San Diego State University, NYU, Northwestern, University of Texas at Austin, and of course, UCLA and several other schools. There was a mixture of production designers and lighting designers and costume designers. Some of the costume work was so great, I must say. And I was really electrified by the students. It was really good to talk to students again because it's been a while for me.
What was the ratio, scene designers to lighting designers to costume designers?
Okay, I think there were, I would guess, around 50 students there, mostly production designers and costume designers, and 5 or 6 lighting designers there. So not a lot. And they had a lot of space, which is great. They set it up on their stage, so there's a lot of space to show this amazing amount of work.
You're really jazzed about that show.
I was very impressed, and I was very encouraged because, I've been sort of in this sort of pessimistic mood about where everything is going. But now I see that there's a lot of spark there, and I'm very excited about it. So yeah, I am.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Steve, did you find the same at the one that you did?
The thing about the showing in New York, everyone is trying to find, David's really hitting all the high points, I think. Everyone is trying to find a way to communicate ideas. The idea of storyboarding, the idea of rendering things out. It's interesting because that idea has been long used in rock and roll because you have to render everything out. You have to lay it all out. The idea is you have a 4-hour rehearsal time and you try to get through 3 songs. You can't come into the space and not have already produced the thing, shown it to the talent, had the agent look at it, have the agency look at it also, and sign off on it before anything ever starts. So it's interesting, this idea of complete designer, production designer. We're moving. Maybe there aren't theater degrees anymore. Maybe they're entertainment degrees. But there is a whole new business. We're going to get there later today, but just go back if you haven't and take a look at all the highlights from the Tony Awards and the way things are being staged and the technology that's coming in. The bar is really being lifted. It's always interesting, I think, when you look at someone like Gene Rosenthal or Theron Musser and the respect that they got and the work they were doing. I don't know if they would get a Tony today. Probably if they were up to speed with all the technology, their artistry is there, but things are changing so fast. It's not, it's not, did you use a Lico or a Fresnel anymore?
You're right. We're going to talk about the Tonys later, but the 5 nominees for the Tonys this year are all stellar and spectacular designers. Justin Townsend's won how many Tonys so far? Yet what I saw in Sunset Boulevard was so unique and special, and I think that's where you're hitting the nail on the head, Steve. What is making it beyond artistic design?
But this also takes me back to our last week's show when we interviewed Keegan and Kelsey about how they keep up with technology, because they are young designers, and all young designers need to be there. They need to be at this level now. Because if you don't understand projections and video and other types of visual presentation, at least have a working knowledge of it, I have no idea how you're going to make it as a designer. If you just lock yourself and I'm a stage lighting designer, I think you're going to be kind of screwed, because that's my belief that everything's going to video or projections. Light is going to be projected now, not necessarily from a fixture, but from a projector. And this is something that I know the people at Black Tracks have been talking about for a long time. And I still believe that's the direction we're going in. But let's get started. Ellen has the first question of the day.
Okay, so Russell, I wonder if that's my fan. Russell in Texas writes, your brother said you have been at Showlight. I am a big fan of USITT and LDI. Should I include Showlight into my convention rotation? What was it like? Is there an Asia event I have been missing too? Wow, there's a lot going on there, Russell. USITT and LDI are trade shows with conferences, and they take place annually. Showlight is a conference that does not have a trade show component, and it takes place once every 4 years. So yes, if you're interested in lighting design in its purest of all forms, I would definitely add Showlight to your rotation. It's always in Europe or the UK, and it's always, the location is predicated on a major sponsor who will, among other things, sponsor the banquet for 400 people, which is always in a secret location.
Wait, is this Showlight or Eyes Wide Shut?
This is Showlight.
Okay.
And this year it was in the orangerie of a chateau, albeit a small chateau, but a lovely little one outside of Dijon. And everybody boarded buses, and off we went, and down this beautiful alleyway of overhanging trees, and the chateau in the distance, and champagne served on the gravel driveway. And then off we went to 400 people sitting down to a dinner. And they do this funny thing where after the main course, after the appetizer and the main course, everybody moves one table to the right or one table to the, the napkins were red, white, and blue, and people move. And the idea is that more people get to talk to more people. So that was kind of fun. The conference itself, they're all 20-minute sessions presented in groups of 3, moderated by someone. And they cover a wide range of subjects, including the picture of Dorian Gray and the technology used there. And there were also some longer workshops for the first time this year, the hit of which was our friend Clifton Taylor, who did the LED version of a color lecture that he did for many, many years with scrollers with Beverly Emmons at the Broadway Lighting Masterclass. And this is sort of an updated version of color mixing and, moving into the new LED world. And it's interesting because for Clifton, it's a shift away from tungsten. But for a lot of the younger designers they're like, well, what are you talking about? Of course, we're using LEDs. So, your generations sort of sort themselves out. But it was very well produced. Kudos to Jim Tetlow, who was a guest here about a month or so ago, before he went off to France. And there was some chit-chat about, wouldn't it be great to have it in the United States every other 2 years? So it could be every 4 years in America and every 4 years in Europe or the UK. But once again, that would mean a major sponsor of some sort in the U.S. So if you have anybody in mind.
I like how you said it's just a small little chateau, and you've got 400 people there having dinner. It's like the gardener's shack where they're all meeting.
Well, no, it's in the former orangerie, which is where they would keep the orange, the orange trees and the citrus trees and move the trees inside when the winter, or as a nursery or whatever. It was not in the chateau itself, which is now not lived in. It's basically being renovated as an event venue. So I imagine there's a lot of weddings and birthday parties and things like that out there. But as the French chateaus go, this one was sort of small. And it was lit by Estera. And when we got there, it was just, basking in the sun. And as we left, somebody had sort of put on some basic lighting, and it looked like the chateau was on fire.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, a bad thing. And they're like, oh, no. And someone was desperately trying to fix the lighting using the app on their cell phone and make it a little more blue than fiery oranges and reds.
So, Ellen, I have a follow-up question here. Do you think for young designers, this would be a great place not only to learn techniques, because I know that there are a lot of sit-downs and presentations and stuff like that from masters of lighting, but also an opportunity to network?
Yes, it's a great networking opportunity. And as a matter of fact, speaking of young people, this year they made a concerted effort. And I don't know the exact numbers, but there were quite a few students that they hosted and quite a few young emerging professionals. So I would say that the overall demographic at Showlight skewed probably 30 or 40 years younger this year than it has in the past.
We get a lot of questions about people wanting to know how to break into Europe.
Right.
For American young designers in America, how can I do European shows?
Right.
And, my answer has always been meet a European director. But do you think that this would be a good thing for them to actually, be European designers as well?
Well, yes, most of the people there are Brits.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in Florence, it was before COVID, but I sort of laughed and said, this is like just taking the British lighting designers from all fields and moving them to Florence for an event. You might as well have stayed in London, although it's fabulous to go someplace else. This time, there were more Americans than ever before. And I think that overall, the population was more international. So I think it's a great networking opportunity for sure. I'm not sure about getting jobs if you're an American working in Europe. Somebody would have to find out, how that goes in terms of legally working in Europe. But there certainly are people who did it. David Hersey and Rick Fisher and other Americans who moved to the UK or to France. Tracy Eck was there, who worked for Disney for many, many years. The rest of that question was, is there an event in Asia that I've been missing too? The only thing that I can think of that might be really fun for a young designer in Asia is SIGGRAPH, which is the computer-generated show. I don't know if you all know about that. It's very cutting edge, and it's very into AI and XR and VR and all that stuff. They do one in the States and they do one in Asia. I think it's in the fall sometime. So Russell could certainly look into SIGGRAPH if he's looking for something in Asia.
So Dennis, you have the next question.
I'm not sure it's a question so much as a comment. Going back 2 shows ago, our friend Drew Belinsky had talked about programming and asked for suggestions on the way we do programming. I had responded on the way I do queuing for shows like the Today Show and Good Morning America and setting up queues 10 and 20 and 30 and so on and so forth. Anyway, Ben, a programmer in New York that I work with a lot, and said, "What are you talking about? You don't do that at all." And then I was thinking and I thought, okay, so maybe you need to timestamp this show right now, because Dennis is going to admit I was incorrect.
Woo! That goes into our bloopers.
Okay. Or maybe it's the title of the show. Dennis was incorrect. Not so much incorrect, but I find now, and as Ben pointed out to me, so many installs that we do, there's no programmer once it's done. There's no LD once it's done. And essentially, a lot of the smaller studios will have a Doug Fleener box or something similar, where 8 or 9 cues are programmed into a button station, and that's what gets brought up by a stage manager or a director or a somebody. But a lot of shows now, and for a major network news studio that I just did, everything is on submasters. It might be the same cue, but it's varied. And the reason being, you'll have an anchor desk, but there'll be 15, 20 different anchors sitting there. So you'll have somebody who is, let's say, follically challenged in the way that you are, David.
Whoa, look at the monitor, big boy.
And you'll have somebody who has that head of hair that I'm so jealous of, like Steve. So you'll need the backlight, the hair lights changed. Also, somebody who's wearing glasses, you need to be able to take the eye light out and adjust the angle so you're not getting reflections in the glasses. So a simple show of one desk that might have 8 or 9 anchors could have anywhere from 10 to 20 different submasters. And the directors are the ones who are asking that to be brought up. So you'll have the submaster for the follically challenged guy, the submaster for the person with hair, the with glasses, without glasses, dark skin, light skin, all of those varieties. And I'm finding more and more that we're not really queuing shows, we're just building submasters. And if that anchor has a guest on his left, there's a submaster for that. So if you have a guest on the left for the one anchor, now you have to have 10 more submasters for the guest on the right, the left, the center, and so on and so forth. So in reality, cues are going the way of the dodo bird. It's just a matter of doing simple buttons or pushes or submaster faders or something very user-friendly that's dumbed down, as they say. And the sad thing is about this sort of thing, somebody is making a decision as to which submaster to use that's not always correct.
Okay, I have the next question. Joanne from Rockford asks, I am a young designer just starting out in the business. So many of my friends talk about their dreams of winning Tony Awards for their work as actors, designers, and directors. They also seem to be greatly affected by positive and negative critical reviews of their work. To me, I just designed a show and move on. I avoid reading reviews of my shows. Should it be important for artists to have positive external validation of their art? Wow, that's a really good question. Okay, I'm going to start this off because this is a discussion in itself. I think this even could be a let's talk about. First of all, human nature is human nature. And there are certain things in human nature that you can't deny. And one of them is people need validation. Everyone's a bit insecure. Now, if you're totally secure, you're a narcissist or whatever you are, you can plow through life doing whatever you want. However, you may not be hired again if you're like that. So we all have this feeling in ourselves that we need someone to say, good job, David. Good job, Joanne. Right? That's important. The question is, who is the person telling you that? Is it your director, which would be very important, or is it a critic? If you're not working in commercial theater, critics don't matter. They really don't. You're going to be hired if you're working at regional operas, if you're in a regional theater, regional ballet company. The critics aren't going to kill the show for the most part. They're not going to do it. If you're working in commercial theater in New York, however, a critic can kill a show. And the producer also is another voice there. So you really need to have that type of validation, which is one of the reasons why I avoid commercial theater at all costs. Because I don't want to be put on that pressure. The pressure I want is when I'm working with my team and we're supporting each other. And that team member, whether it be the costume designer, the director, or whoever, if they have something to say that is a criticism, I will take it as part of the process of collaboration. And that's good because that's positive. But if it's someone coming in and saying, oh, that looks like shit, you need to change this. Well, sometimes that happens when, you have the artistic director looking at it. They usually don't talk to you. They talk to the director. And then the director has a way of presenting it. If it's the director's idea, or if the director likes what you've done a great deal, that they may go just turn back to the producer or to the artistic director, say, this is the way we want this to look. And I've had directors fight for those ideas that we've had together. But sometimes the director come up and say, David, so-and-so was into just today, and, they think it's a little bit too bright here. And I kind of agree with them after they said that. I said, okay, no problem. Let's bring it down. That sort of thing happens naturally. But there are some people out there that need more than that type of validation. They want to get a Tony Award. We're going to be talking about Tonys in a second, but let me tell you, very few people get Tony Awards in the big scheme of things. And it's really important to realize that when you're in a commercial situation, like pretty much what the Tonys look at, public success, the success of the show, the financial success of the show, the commercial success of the show weighs heavily in these, no matter what you say, because there have been a lot of great designs on Broadway that would be eligible for Tony nominations that don't get nominated because they're not huge commercial successes. Or they get nominated and they don't win. Or the person who wins for a different reason that has nothing to do with artistic achievement. That's how I feel about it. How about you all?
I think a lot of the validation first needs to be internal to the designer themselves. If a designer isn't confident in their own work, then the 5 or 6 different opinions that they're going to get hit with, at least 5 or 6, then they're going to be very confused, which might be one of the problems with Joanne from Rockford. And younger designers will have that issue. The reality is, especially in theater, it's a collaboration. So everybody needs to work together and create something that they're comfortable and happy with as a team. Everybody has to have a way of validating their work internally. And also from people you trust, who you would have to assume is your director, or even as younger designers, your mentors. How many people like you and Steve, Stan, people who are guiding young minds, and even myself with people who I bring in on shows. You hope that they're going to grow, become good artists, better artists, and get their own critical tenets. How do you teach that, I think, is a problem.
But one of the things you said is interesting because there is a huge Tony nominating committee and they have to see everything that opens. And hopefully they have seen enough that they know what they're looking at and pick the best. So in theory, the 5 lighting designers should all be at the top of the ladder. It should be very hard to pick amongst them. So I don't know. I think in terms of this question, though, she said she doesn't want to read the reviews. I think there's a difference between reading the reviews and wanting to win awards. I think the rewards validate your work in a different way than some critic who may or may not know what they're looking at.
You do have to develop a little bit of thick skin here. I don't run down the street to try to find the review, but I don't ignore it either. Once you read a review, you do have to kind of be of the mindset that if you're celebrating the good review, as this man is a Solomon who's given you this review, then you also have to look at the bad review and go, that person is a Solomon also. And you have to think about who is reviewing you. Is it the person from some small town in Texas who also does the sports column and the lawn and garden review and the restaurant review? Or is it someone who is trained, who has an eye and has a skill level in judging work and a track record? Do they know what they're talking about? I mean, it's the same. If you watch in Dennis's world, if you're watching the sporting events, if it's me commenting on the Super Bowl, no one cares what I think. But if it's someone who is a really skilled sports analysis person doing it, then yeah, there's some validity there. I just don't think you can be held hostage by a review. But I like to see what people think. Sometimes I look at a review and it's not a good review, and I learn from that. I go, oh, well, they have a point. They have a point here. And I move on with my life.
You are listening to Light Talk. And today, Light Talk is sponsored by
Make It Better Lighting Educational Videos, Volume 1, Elegance with Electricity, Ballet Edition 2025. In the world of tutus and toe shoes, lighting is everything. Good lighting can turn a plie into poetry or a grand jeté into a ghost story. Nail it, and it's magic. Screw it up, and suddenly your elegant ballerina looks like she's in a hostage video. Let's break down the holy trinity of stage lighting before your next show turns into Black Swan meets Blair Witch. It all starts with 3-point lighting. Key light, the prima ballerina of lights. This is the lead dancer in the lighting ensemble. Key light sets the tone, tells the audience where to look, and makes sure your star doesn't look like she's emerging from the underworld. You want to angle it at 45 degrees from the subject, not from the planet Mars, and certainly not from hell. Use a soft diffuser unless you're going for that ballerina in a microwave look. Adjust the brightness. Visibility is good. If your principal looks like she's being summoned to the light that will take her back to the underworld, turn it down. Next, fill light, the corps de ballet of the setup, your emotional support light. It chills out the shadows cast by the key light and gives every part of the human form a chance to exist. You want to place it opposite the key light to keep your stage from looking like a third-rate Renaissance oil painting. If you forget it, half your dancer's face will look like it's hiding from the law. Pro tip, If the dancer's mid-leap looks like he has entered a black hole, congratulations, you've officially failed Fill Light 101. And finally, Rim Light, stage witchcraft. This is the sparkle, the edge, the did she just levitate moment. If your dancer looks ethereal, you nailed it. Rim light pulls your dancer out of the backdrop as if by magic. You want to place the light behind or slightly to the side. You want a healthy radiance, not a laser beam turning your dancer into a radioactive glowworm. Pro tip, if it looks like she's being abducted by aliens, try again. Bonus round, the drunken follow-spot operator, a cautionary tale. Every theater has one. A caffeine-addled chaos gremlin with a spotlight and no chill. Signs you have one? The lead's big solo is lit. 2 dancers over. The exit sign is now the star of Act 2. The follow spot is bobbing and weaving like a searchlight in a POW camp. Solution? Good luck, my friend. There is no solution. This has been an educational moment from Make It Better Lighting Educational Videos.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those monkeys, ducks, and iguanas bouncing around to the sweet sounds of Taylor Swift means it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About the Tony Awards. And I mean, Broadway is back. It's coming off the biggest season in a long time. The total gross this year, $1.89 billion, and that surpassed everything going back to 2018, 2019. So it's interesting, and I think the Tony Awards were unique this year. It wasn't one show. It wasn't like a Hamilton that's going to dominate everything. At the 78th Annual Tony Awards, the Tonys went all over the place. Certainly, maybe Happy Ending won the Best Musical, but there were 5 other shows that really took home the awards. So here are the shows that did win Tonys, and we'll get specific about what they won in a second. But many happy endings, 6 awards. Buena Vista Social Club, 4. Stranger Things, The First Shadow, 3. Sunset Boulevard, 3. Oh, Mary, 2. The Picture of Dorian Gray, 2. Purpose, 2. Death Becomes Her, 1. Eureka Day, 1. Operation Mincemeat, a new musical, 1. And Yellowface took 1. All right, so let's break that down. The best costume design of a musical went to Paul Tazwell, Death Becomes Her. Best costume design of a play, Marg Horwell, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Best scenic design of a play, Marion Buther and 59 Studios, Stranger Things, The First Shadow. Best scenic design of a musical, Dane Laffery and George Reeve, Maybe Happy Ending. Best lighting design of a play, John Clark, Stranger Things, The First Shadow. Best lighting design of a musical, Jack Knowles, Sunset Boulevard. Best sound design of a play, Paul Ardetti, Stranger Things, The First Shadow. Best sound design of a musical, Jonathan Dean's Buena Vista Social Club. And I got to give a shout out this year to the Tony winner for excellence in theater education. And that went to Theo Wargo, theater arts teacher at the Boy and Girls High School. Congratulations, Theo. All right, it's like a Sergio Leone Western. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Tony Awards this year?
One of the incredible things about the Tonys this year is the record-breaking diversity that was recognized. Historically, Broadway was not welcoming for, let's say, performers of color. You had shows like The King and I, Miss Saigon, so on. But this year, you have Nicole Scherzinger, who's the second Asian woman ever to win Best Actress in a Musical. If I remember correctly, Lea Salonga was the first for Miss Saigon. Francis Ju became the second Asian man ever to win in his category. Darren Criss the first Asian American actor ever to win Best Actor. And of course, you missed a very unique acceptance speech, David, with Cole Escurla, who made Broadway history as the first non-binary actor to win a Tony for Best Actor in a Play for Mary Todd. It was pretty astounding. The show was simple. It was straightforward. You could tell that they're trying to do it on shoestring budgets. But White Cherry Productions, the company Ricky Kirshner and Glenn Weiss run, did an excellent job. And Steve Bass, again, as production designer, and Bobby Dickinson and Ed McCarthy as the lighting designer did their usual stellar work. I mean, Ricky Kirshner and Glenn Weiss have been doing this now for at least a decade. And the work was really exceptional. Steve, Ellen, do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I think that Bob Dickinson and Ed McCarthy did a great job with the lighting this year. One of the pieces that I've watched probably 6 times since the Tonys is the revival of the original cast of Hamilton that got together and did a little mashup of bits and pieces from the songs.
It was spectacular.
The lighting was exceptional for that. And I think they did a really nice job. I think it was one of the most beautiful looking award shows we've seen in a while.
I have a technical question, Dennis. How difficult do you think that walkabout that Sunset Boulevard is to accomplish?
When I saw Sunset Boulevard, I knew nothing about the show, nothing at all. And as a matter of fact, as I said, my daughter took me for my birthday. We had front row center mezzanine. And I, as I'm wont to do before the show started, I looked above, and Jack Knowles had, and again, I don't know exact counts, I'd say a half a dozen lights over my head. And then I looked at the side booms, and there might have been 4 or 5 lights. They were all movers. They had 4 or 5 lights on the booms left and right. And I said to my daughter, I said, wow, I'm not expecting much out of the lighting of this show. And 10 minutes into the show, when the curtain opened, the show is cued within an inch of its life. It is spectacularly beautiful. That being said, there's a video component that most of the show is watched on a screen, because throughout the whole show, there are actors in, maybe they're actors, I'm not sure, some of them might be technicians, in carrying around a apparatus that was made that has lights built into it with a camera on it, and they're actually videotaping, and it's being projected live on the screen, what the actors are singing and saying and doing. So here you have a musical that's based on a movie about the movies that's being taped and shot and presented as a movie and a live event. It was just blowing my mind how well it was executed. It's not our parents' Sunset Boulevard.
You know, it's funny because I sort of feel like Broadway is finally catching up to the way downtown, way avant-garde movement, which has done this kind of like disembodied camera with live footage coming in from other places on stage for a long time. Certainly our friend Jake Pinholster, when he was a projection designer in New York, did it with that group that was called Les Frères Corbusier. A lot of the really, hip downtown companies have done stuff like this for a really long time.
But do you think that diehard Broadway theater, as in legit theater fans, are going to get turned off to this whole new way of presenting theater?
No, I hope they'll like it. I mean, when Hamilton first came out, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I'm not going. It's rap." And I said, "Yes, you are going. It's fabulous." And she went and loved it. So I just think you have to be open to new experiences.
Well, you have to define who those legit theater people are. And if we're talking about Broadway, these are the tourists from Ohio and Tennessee and South Carolina who are coming to New York to see, and I don't mean to be demeaning, they're coming to see Disney on Broadway. And now there's all of a sudden, yeah, I mean, it's like the Sphere in Las Vegas. It's, wow, what am I watching here? It's the prices you're paying for a ticket sometimes, you're getting that experience. You think you left the theater and you think, man, I got my money's worth.
Well, I think if Broadway doesn't move into more experimental kind of stuff, they're going to lose the younger audience altogether. And eventually the blue hairs from Ohio are going to, stop coming. And I think you need to build up a younger audience. And I mean, the picture of Dorian Gray is a perfect example of this. Is it that it's a real blend of film and live cameras on stage and pre-recorded film. And interestingly enough, costume design won, the actress won, but it didn't get any design awards other than costumes. And I think it's sort of the most edgy thing on Broadway. So I don't know what happened there in terms of the design stuff, but that's also one where, like, Dennis was, curiously overwhelmed how they were doing it. This one, if the actors can't do the show, they can't go on. There's no understudy because everything is half of the video is pre-recorded for her.
Wow. See, at Sunset Boulevard, it's live. And I'll tell you, I did not see Nicole Scherzinger when I saw the show. I saw they have a second person playing Norma Desmond, and that's Mandy Gonzalez. And I'm telling you, I can't imagine anybody better. When she did the closing Act One number, I was in tears. And I looked around me, and people around me were crying. I mean, she just sold that number, and the way it was designed and Jack's lighting for it. It was just an experience. And I think what we're going to the theater for is that experience, not necessarily to see yet another production of Guys and Dolls.
That's why I keep shaking my head. It's like they're busy promoting that the first big new Broadway musical next year is a revival of Mamma Mia. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Please.
A horrible show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I hear they're making another movie
they're going to make
too,
a fortune on it. They're going to make a fortune on it because listen, this is what's called commercial theater. And this is why I hate commercial theater. Now, some of it, okay, there's been some great shows on Broadway, absolutely great pieces of art, but a lot of it is Back to the Future, all that stuff that grabs, they're selling $300 tickets.
Right.
And they're selling it to tourists, what Steve's talking about. Absolutely. Are they the core theater group? In commercial theater, they are the core theater group. That's the way it is. In regional theater, it's a little more artistic, I believe. Okay? I hate to be a snob, but that's the truth. It's about money in commercial theater.
I think Broadway has a problem because financially, I don't know how long it can sustain itself. Everybody wants more money. The actors, all of the unions, all of the designers, the ticket takers, everybody. And they can't add more performances, and they can't add more seats. So the only thing they can do is keep adding ticket prices to go higher and higher and higher. And eventually, I think that model's going to collapse.
But when you have shows like Dorian Gray or Sunset Boulevard, oh my God, not only do you have a cast of 30 people or 40 people, the video component, what on earth does Sunset Boulevard spend just to have the security out on the street? The operating costs have to be enormous. How do you make that nut back?
Well, Dorian Gray, Sarah Snook plays 26 characters. However, there are a lot of video operators working on that show, and they, although she does not, they apparently have understudies in case one of the camera operators is not there. Somebody else knows how to operate the cameras.
Well, anyway, congratulations to all the winners and most important, everyone nominated, because being nominated is just as good as winning. I'm sorry.
Right.
Going back to Joanne's question earlier, is it important, to be validated? The best validations you're going to get are from your peers. That's what the bottom line. All right, Steve has the last question of the day.
Frank in Utah writes, how do you successfully light over rehearsal? I can't keep up with the pace of doing so, and I'm afraid I will black out the stage to boot. All right, so there's two things here. Are you trying to light over a rehearsal, or are you trying to light over a run? And those are two very different things. Rehearsal, I've never found the pace of rehearsal particularly demanding to work over. But if you've never done it, I could see how you could be terrified about blacking people out on stage and getting behind. Easy way to do this. You're doing a show and Act One. Act 1, you think there's going to be 10 looks in Act 1, and they're all going to be based off the first look. I don't know, sunset to sunrise. Go ahead and just write your cue 1, plug it into the board 20 times. Get your cue 1 the way you want it to look. You've got some place to go. Edit your cue 1, make it the next level of darkness that's on stage. Cut it into cue 2, go to cue 2. Take a look at it. Edit, make changes there. You know where cue 3 is going to be. It's going to get a little darker. You can work on that in blind. Cut and paste what you went to, edit it, move it into 3. So, there are little tricks you can do. You probably can't do this with a musical, but there are a lot of shows you can get a lot of work accomplished and move forward without this fear. The fear here is that every cue has to be based off starting in black. I've got to, rejigger every light in the rig. Maybe you do, and maybe that doesn't work so well. I think in a rehearsal, also going into working over rehearsal, you have to have at least a 5-minute conversation with the director and discuss what you're trying to accomplish that night. And is it all right? Is it all right for you to work there? If the director knows what you're trying to accomplish, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be on your side, and they're going to be even happier about it because they're seeing the cue develop, and they're going to turn to you and say, is that the real cue? I like it. Or it needs to be brighter, needs to be darker. Working over a rehearsal is a win-win for everyone. Sitting in the theater by yourself with a mannequin on stage is just not the way to do a show. It is just not the way to light a show. David, you've had a lifetime of working over rehearsals.
Oh my God!
And you're doing opera.
The regional opera, and I've said regional opera because in the larger companies like San Francisco Opera and the Met and Covent Garden and Lyric Opera Chicago, you do have lighting time, and sometimes you have a lot of lighting time. But in a lot of the smaller companies, you do light over rehearsals. Now, it's not rehearsal. You're talking about runs. Usually, it's what's called a piano tech, where the singers and actors have already rehearsed this in a rehearsal room. Then they're coming on stage. So what the director tries to do at a piano tech is run certain parts of the show, and maybe all of Act 1 tonight. That's all we're doing. Or maybe we're just doing half of Act 1, right? What I always do, because I've already talked to the director about the lighting states, we have a pretty good idea. I designed the plot so I can get the type of light and atmospheres that I want. I always start out with the key light. I don't try to do too much. I'll have the key light pouring through the window, or maybe it's uplight, or maybe it's a shin kicker. I don't know, but I start with that. And then I usually put like a group of my front light, and I bring it up to like 30%, right? And I ignore it. Because that light, that immediately will keep you from blacking out the stage, okay? And I park it. I don't record it. I don't record it in the queue. I just park it. So even if you say, go to black, it will not go out. That will not go out. So that's really important. As I've said before, I've always put blocks at the end of all of my sections. So at the end of Act 1, there's a block. At the end of Act 2, there's a block. There's a blackout. There's a block. All that so that when I come back and fix it, I'm not worried about things tracking in or tracking through. It's very important. Another thing, and this actually works really well, you can reuse cues from earlier. If you set up a cue that you really like, that's more of a general cue, or that really captures the atmosphere, and it's from Act 1 and it's going to work in Act 2 or work in the later scene, make a note of it and just go back to that cue and dupe it forward. You can always change it later, but if it's close, sometimes it gives you a really solid starting point for that atmosphere. You have to learn how to do this. And the best way to learn is in school. Because if you can't keep up, you're not going to make it in the profession. And this is what I always trained my students to do. I heard a student says, hold on, I'll take a note. Don't do that. Don't take a note, because I'm telling you, you're not going to have actors on stage that next day when you have a lighting. Learn how to bring up that channel fast and precisely. And you got to just practice doing this. This is what it is. You have to be in the moment for that 4-hour rehearsal constantly, because things change. The director may change the blocking in that. They may look at it and say, this worked in the rehearsal hall, but now that I have this big staircase, I want to use that stair. Well, get that light on that stair, right? Learn how to do this, because this is what's going to keep you surviving as a designer. Because if you're in the weeds, you're not going to be working. You got to learn how to do this. Be confident, know your magic sheet, know your fixtures. Make sure you know which fixtures are being used at a particular moment and which ones aren't. So that is really, really important.
Wow. 110%. So you nailed everything there, David.
Yep.
The only thing I'd add is also your programmer. He has to
Oh,
be
yeah.
with you
Oh, yeah.
all
Absolutely.
the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, the programmer has to be able to keep up too.
If I'm doing a very complicated show, I'll have 2 programmers.
Yeah. That's why I fire programmers. If they can't keep up with me, they're gone.
Yeah.
And the good professional programmer can keep up with you.
And it's also, don't be afraid to tell people to shut up who are sitting around you. I was working last night, and the programmer and the stage manager and I were trying to work something out, and we were trying to work fast. And like these 2 people were just sitting behind us talking about where they were going to go have pizza.
Oh, kavod.
And I turned around and said, you can't talk about that right now. I got too much in my brain, and the pizza sounds so good. But stop talking.
Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, you will be dealing with me, Snoot, from the Snoot Group. And you don't want to with me, because I will make your life unbearably miserable as I drain the retirement funds from these Lumen bozos.
Thank you, Snoot. Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
Coming to you from Long Beach, the Lone Star State, St. Bart's, and the Big Apple, New York City.
and be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you even more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Light